Hey, and good morning. Welcome into this IdahoSports.com special interview. Brandon Baney joined by a big guest coming up here in just a moment. Let me take you through my day yesterday here at IdahoSports.com, really the entire IdahoSports.com team. It was Selection Sunday, one of the most exciting times of the year, of course. All of the state football brackets were released for the state playoffs with the exception of Class 5A because there's a three-way tiebreaker that still needs to be sorted out Monday night up north. But overall, the brackets get released, and of course, we know the past couple of years, for the most part, the brackets have been determined using MaxPreps rankings. Well, along with that came a lot of questions from fans and coaches and athletic directors around the state. And so, to clear up the confusion and kind of explain how the IHSAA MaxPreps selection process works with determining how our football brackets get seeded, I went straight to the man himself, Chad Williams, Executive Director of the IHSAA. Good morning, Chad. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Brandon. Yeah, thanks for having us. Anytime we can take a chance to help everybody understand how the IHSAA works, it's a great opportunity.
So when we first partnered up with MaxPreps here, the state of Idaho and MaxPreps, to kind of determine mostly the at-large bids to the state tournaments for football and what the overall seeds would be, there was a lot of unknown about it. The MaxPreps rankings are constantly updating. There's a giant supercomputer in California that's getting scores from all over the nation, and that thing is churning out updates constantly. And so the rankings someone saw at 9 o'clock Sunday morning might be different by the time it was noon that day. And so during the off season, the IHSAA instituted a hard deadline for Idaho scores to be inputted and into the supercomputer. And then any scores or any updates that came after that hard deadline, sorry, we've set the hard deadline. Is that correct?
Yeah, in fact, we've had that hard deadline, and it's Saturday night at midnight before the playoffs begin. We've actually had that rule for quite a few years. Last year, though, was there was some data that wasn't input correctly, and it was kind of a big deal. In fact, it was a big deal for specific schools. And so this past year is the first time that the board adopted a rule to fine teams that had incorrect data, and the fine is $1,500 if they don't have their data input by midnight, Saturday night at midnight.
Yeah, so let's go there because a lot of the questions we got came with the Class 6A bracket. It's Idaho's largest classification. When that midnight Saturday deadline came, the rankings had Highland ahead of Owyhee. The matchup was Highland at Mountain View, Owyhee at Rocky Mountain. Well, Sunday morning rolls around, and all of a sudden, Owyhee has leapfrogged Highland, and the matchups change, right? Owyhee now should be playing Mountain View, and Highland should be playing Rocky Mountain. But when you look at the final MaxPreps rankings that were set in stone when that midnight deadline passed, you can look at the records of the teams and kind of figure out what might be missing. And just from glancing at it, Chad, I noticed that, well, it looks like Boise and Capital may be a game short in the overall ledger. They happen to play each other on Friday. It certainly looks like that score didn't get in by that midnight deadline Saturday. It was then put in sometime Sunday, which affected the rankings. But unfortunately, because that deadline passed and that Boise Capital score was not in, the rankings have to stay the way they originally were, right? Highland ahead of Owyhee.
Yeah, we've discussed this a lot, but we picked the deadline, and what would happen if we decided to have flexibility on the deadline is any scores that are input, it would affect every single bracket. Any team that played a team lower than their classification, it would affect their classification, and then that classification will probably play some teams that are at a lower classification than them, and it's just a ripple effect. Also, as teams from around the nation input their data, we have teams that play teams from Arizona, from Colorado, from Utah, Oregon, Washington. Whenever those teams input their data, it also affects the rankings. And so for that reason, like we could change our deadline. We could change our deadline to whatever we want. But as of right now, our deadline is Saturday at midnight.
Yeah, to illustrate how this ripple effect can happen, just off the top of my head, Highland played Pocatello this year. That's a 6A and a 5A. Pocatello played Century. Century played Teton. That's a 4A and a 3A. Teton played pretty low, and that's a 4A and a 3A. So from 6A all the way down to 3A, kind of a butterfly effect. It can totally change the entire complexion. So you mentioned a new penalty was going to be imposed this year, a $1,500 fine for schools that either A, didn't have their score submitted by that deadline, or B, had an incorrect score submitted. Does the IHSAA intend to penalize the schools that were missing that score on Sunday morning with this new penalty?
So last year when this occurred a couple of different times for different sports, we didn't have a penalty. And so all we were able to do was tell the school, sorry, it's incorrect. These other schools didn't input their data. At that point, the board was really felt passionate that we needed to have some kind of penalty. So the board very seldom doesn't follow their rules. And so, yeah, I'll be surprised if we don't impose that penalty.
That's something that'll probably be voted on at the next meeting or discussed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. The other big question we got was with the 1A rankings, where when everyone got up Sunday morning, Genesee was number 3, Cary was number 5. Well, by midday Sunday, they had flip-flopped. Cary had been number 3 and Genesee had been number 5. I had Cary and Genesee people reaching out to me going, hey, what's the deal here? And I told them, hey, I think whatever the bracket was this morning, that's the way it goes. Bummer for the Cary fans. Nice for Genesee because it allows them to play a team that's really close to them, Timberline, in the opening round of the playoffs. I think what happened there, and this is a point you brought up, is Genesee and the teams in North Idaho especially play a lot of Washington schools. They play a lot of Oregon schools. We see down in southern Utah or southern Idaho, a lot of Utah schools play our Idaho schools. And so those states have their own rules on when scores will be submitted. I'm assuming a Washington school put in a score on Sunday, and that's what flipped Genesee and Cary. But that's another reason why you put this hard deadline in, right? Because we can't control what Washington, Oregon, Utah, etc. are doing.
Yeah, for sure. And something unique about yesterday. So normally MaxPreps updates the rankings on Sunday and then on Thursday, and unless a state requests that they update them. And so they actually update Saturday at midnight because Idaho requests that they do that. Anyhow, there are other states around the nation that are using these rankings as well. And so they actually updated the rankings yesterday at midnight for us. And then they also updated them at noon and then at 12:30 and then also at 2 p.m. So that's something unique that normally doesn't happen, but it did update like 4 times yesterday within about 13, 14 hours.
And that's a request that the IHSAA made specifically to MaxPreps?
No. So we only asked for it Saturday at midnight. But other states requested that they update the ranking. And so whenever they update it, it affects the entire nation, basically. The rankings nationwide.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And then the last question I was going to have was about the actual rating system, not how it works. We've all tried to crack that code, and they've got that locked away. We'll never know. But I did notice sometimes there are teams in the rankings that will have the exact same number. Like when you go to MaxPreps.com and you look at the Idaho team rankings, usually they only go out 2 numbers past the decimal point. And so what I saw on Sunday morning was Firth and Soda Springs actually had the exact same number. And then when the official rankings were posted to the IHSAA website, I think they went out to like the 5th decimal point to finally like determine, Firth was actually ahead of Soda Springs. So is that something you have to request? Like, hey, we have to go all the way out to the 5th or 6th decimal point to figure out these 2 teams who is actually ahead?
Mm-hmm. So we have a MaxPreps liaison for Idaho. She actually resides in California, and she's the one that we reach out to, and she crunches the numbers for us so that we can get the rankings. And yeah, when needed, she will do whatever it takes, whether it's 4 or 5 decimals, to make sure that we know who is ranked where.
Okay, interesting. I know there was a school that put in an appeal to, hey, can we take a look at the bracket? Can we make the change? But there is a specific rule that is hard in place. All the coaches and athletic directors have it in their handbook. They have the, they were all told about it a couple of times at the start of the year. And so the appeal process is always there, but it's going to be really hard with that rule so clear cut, Chad, right? It's going to be hard for a school to win an appeal to change the entire playoff bracket based upon a score that was missing.
Yeah, it definitely brings challenges. So at the IHSAA, we definitely say that all of our rules are appealable because we can't write perfect rules that match every situation. And so whenever a situation comes up and one of our member schools wants to appeal it, we definitely give them the option to do that. And that appeal goes to, that request goes to our 15 board members, and then they vote. The challenge with waiving that rule is if we did include some data after the deadline, it wouldn't just affect one classification. It would affect every single classification because of that ripple effect we talked about earlier. And obviously all the teams that it would affect positively would probably be in favor of it, and all the teams that it would affect negatively wouldn't be. So yeah, so far the board has not had an appetite for waiving that rule, the Saturday at midnight deadline rule.
And it is officially Rule 2-5-3 for any fans, coaches, etc. that want to look that up for clarification. Rule 2-5-3 will point you in the right direction. So, Chad, I appreciate you coming on to help clear up. We always get questions like this every single year, and I'm like, I think it's fairly clear cut. Like there's a deadline, and whatever's in at the deadline is it. And so I appreciate you coming on and letting everybody around the state know. Now, hopefully next year, if this happens, hopefully this doesn't happen again, but if it does, they can just refer back to this and go, oh, okay, what was it? Midnight Saturday is it? No,
for sure. And realize, as we talked about earlier, like MaxPreps is going to play even a larger role in all of our tournaments next year. And unfortunately, this will happen again. It happened last year a couple of times. We were hoping that the $1,500 fine would motivate folks to stay on top of their scores, but again, it's happened again for football. But hopefully it happens less because we want all of the correct data so that we can have the correct rankings. But we need our member schools to help us with that as well.
Yeah, and let's remember, this isn't just a football thing. It's volleyball, it's soccer, it's basketball. This applies to every sport. There is a set deadline for every sport, right, in terms of getting for the state tournament seedings. And if you don't hit that deadline, you're going to be hit with that $1,500 fine. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, speaking of all the other sports, I know it's a busy time of year for you, Chad, so we will let you go. You've got one more state soccer championship to be played Monday night due to a lightning delay, state cross country, state swimming, state volleyball, and, of course, state football. So, Chad, we appreciate you taking the time with us.
Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate your covers.